All right, fourth grade. So yesterday you were introduced to a certain immigrant group that you were researching, and your immigrant group might have been different from another classmate's. But even though we did different research, we are all going to be doing the same task today, which is grabbing that writing notebook and writing a letter home through the perspective of somebody from that group of settlers. So when you watch this video, you'll be pausing and writing, and what's beautiful is by the time this video is done, you're going to have your entire letter draft written. That's my promise for you. So let's do your first task. You have to get your writing notebook to get that writing completed. So get your notebook and open up to your table of contents, because this right here is what you're going to be calling today's lesson in your table of contents. So if you need to, pause this video right now, get your writing notebook, and make a new entry in your table of contents. Are you ready to go? All right, let's start. On that blank page is where you're going to be writing your letter. And you'll notice that I have a bit of an outline for us to start with right here today. Now, some parts are written in black. Those are sentence starters that you can use, or at least take the ideas from. And then today, I'm going to be filling in information with green. This is where I'm going to use the research from yesterday to fill in details that I think this person might say. I'm not going to come out in my letter and say, hey, it's me, Julie. Do you remember me? I'm from Vietnam. We don't write like that to our friends. Instead, I'm going to use details from my research to really show their perspective. So first and foremost, when we write a letter, at the very top of our paper, we start with the word dear with a capital D, and then we figure out who it is that we want to address this letter to. Now, this is where you can get creative. Think of somebody that you would send this letter to. It could be a relative. It could be a close family friend. You can use the name of somebody that you already know. Just remember that we're talking about someone from maybe 100 to 150 years ago. So we're not going to call them, what's up, B-Dog? How's it going? We're going to be using names that sound more formal. So pick out a name of somebody that you want to write this letter to and fill in with dear blank. Pause this video to do that job, and we'll come back together in about 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I wrote my husband's name, so I put dear, capital E, Eli, with a comma. So at this point, we both have the person that we're addressed to, and we're ready to start beginning our sentence writing. Like I mentioned, the black sentences are sentence starters that you can use. You can either choose to copy these black words directly, or if you feel more creative, you can take the idea of those sentences and kind of like a Wednesday workit, you can switch up the words so that it has a different sort of sound and it sounds closer to what you would say. Remember though, this entire letter, we're going to sound formal. Even though we're writing to a friend, and it may have been casual for them back in the day, they talked a lot more formally back then than we do to our friends now. So make sure that when you're filling in whatever sentence you choose, that you're using a formal language. The first sentence reads, as you may have heard, I moved to Kansas. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to pause your video and write that sentence down, or think of a way that you could say something like this in your own wording. And when we come back from that pause, we'll start on our next sentence. So I'll see you in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's continue on. Next, we're going to be talking about push and pull factors. Why is it that your group of settlers left their homeland? And what is it about Kansas that attracted your settlers to come to them? So we're actually going to be writing 2 sentences. One sentence talks about the push. One sentence talks about the pull. Let's focus first on the push. What is pushing you from your homeland? Why are you deciding to completely uproot your life? You may have remembered that yesterday I was studying the African American settler group. So for my example today, I'm going to be talking about the research that I did. But the people that you studied had completely different push and pull factors. So yeah, I'll be writing example sentences, but whatever I write in green, you should not be copying. None of you did the same research that I did yesterday. So I'm going to pause this video, and I'm going to take about 5 seconds to write down my sentence of why is it that my group of people left their homeland. And you can do the same thing. If you want to wait till after this pause, get a few ideas about what I wrote, and then go back to your letter, you can do that too. But in about 5 seconds, you'll see my push factor. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And here is my push factor. The reason why my group of settlers left where they were living, which was Kentucky, Tennessee, and the South, is because they were freed slaves who were hoping to leave a place of discrimination and find equality. So I wrote that my push factor says, we left home in hopes of finding equality. If you want to use the words like we left home in your sentence as well, if you haven't gotten a chance to write down your push factor, take a look at this sentence and then maybe pause this video again so you can write your own push factor. If you're good to go, I'm just going to keep talking about the next sentence. Now that we've talked about the push factor, what's sending you away from your home, now we're going to talk about the pull factor. What's bringing you specifically to Kansas? If you're choosing to move and uproot your entire life, what is it about Kansas that is really selling you and bringing you in? So I'm going to pause again. And in these 5 seconds, I'm going to write down a sentence that describes my pull factor, what's bringing me in. And you can do the same thing as well. I'll see you in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So here's my pull factor. People told us that Kansas has great farmland and a safe place for all. Because remember, that's what we're attracting a lot of people to Kansas. They were actually telling freed African American slaves, hey, you should come to Kansas. You know, Kansas opposed slavery. They've got great land, lots of trees, come on down. And that's what attracted a lot of people to move there. But again, your sentence may look different. So at this point, we have written who we address the letter to. You have written a sentence saying, as you may have heard, or as you know, I've moved to Kansas. And then you created 2 more sentences about the push and pull factors that sent you to Kansas. So at this point, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences, if you include that address at the top. So if you need to pause this video and catch up, I really recommend you do so, because remember, the goal is by the end of this video, your entire draft is completed. So if you need a moment to catch up, go ahead and do that. But if you're following along and you've paused along the way and you say, Mrs. Schumann, I'm good to go, then I'm going to keep moving. We've caught our friend up as to why we've left. But now let's tell them what life is like in Kansas. Now we live in blank Kansas, and life is very different. Remember, the black words you can either copy directly, or you can take the same idea and mix around the words so it's in your own phrasing. Now you see that there's a blank in the middle of the sentence here. Each of our settler groups found a specific place in Kansas to live in. And for my group of settlers, it was Nicodemus, Kansas. That was the city that they chose to live in. So I'm going to put specifically the name of the town, Nicodemus, before the word Kansas. Now we live in capital letter Nicodemus, comma, Kansas, and life is very different. Remember, your group of settlers lived somewhere totally different than Nicodemus. You will not be writing Nicodemus on your letter. Instead, you're going to be telling me where your settlers moved to. Pause this video and create this next sentence, and I'll see you in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So now we're going to talk about life in Kansas. You'll notice that now, just like the push and pull factors, you've got a lot of freedom with these next few sentences. I've got nothing but blank spaces for you to fill in now. Now that you've told your friend where you're living in Kansas, it's time to tell them, how is Kansas? Is it working out for you? Is it what you expected? How is your life different? So for this first sentence, we're going to explain how has life changed for you. And then in the second sentence, we'll say, are you happy with Kansas and why or why not? So I'm going to be thinking about my settler group and what life was like for them when they moved to Kansas. What kind of work did they do? How did their town feel when they moved there? Were people kind? Did they build a community? So I'm going to take a moment and write a sentence about how life was like for African American settlers in Nicodemus. It is your turn to also pause this video and write a sentence about what was life like for your settler group in your city. What did they do? I'll see you in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. For my next sentence, I wrote, there isn't much around us and it's hard to survive. You might remember when I was doing research yesterday, after they moved to Kansas, they realized there really aren't many trees. And the closest place to get supplies is 30 miles away. And in order to get fuel, they have to burn buffalo chips and sunflowers. So it wasn't quite the Kansas that they were sold on. So now that I've described a little bit of what life is like in that state, I'm going to talk about, am I happy here? Is it what I expected it to be? Now, if you want to add more detail to this sentence, you can. I only had room for this one sentence, but honestly, I wish I could have gone into more detail and talked about the fact that there was no fuel, no farmland, no trees like I was promised. So if you want to even pause this video again and include more detail about what life is like for you in your new city in Kansas, you absolutely can. That would make a really excellent letter. So if you need to do that, pause now and add detail. If not, your next job is going to be telling me, using the information that's inside your sentence about what's in Kansas, do you think your settler is happy? Do you think that they are glad that they moved to Kansas? And why or why not? Why do you think they feel that way, or why don't you think they feel that way? Pause this video to fill in that sentence. I'll see you in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So I wrote, I'm struggling to farm, but I'm happy to live in a new and kind community. Because I'm sure for African Americans, it was a complicated feeling. They weren't exactly sold on the state that they moved to. They were probably given some promises that were false hopes, but they were escaping discrimination in the South. So to live in a community of people like them, where they felt cared for and safe and living in a state that opposed slavery, probably made them feel more comfortable, I imagine. I'm just using the perspective that I gained from my research to think of what I could say if my person is happy or not. So now that I've described what life is like in Kansas, it's time for me to close my letter. So we're going to be writing sentences that really wrap up this letter in a bow and prompt our friend to write us back soon because they live far away and we want to hear from them. So starting with the sentence, I really miss you. Again, you can copy exactly what's written in black, or you can rephrase it in a way that makes most sense for you. Please write me back and tell me about what is new in blank. Remember, we all had different homelands. So this blank space is where you're going to tell me where your group of settlers came from. For my group of settlers, they came from Kentucky or Tennessee. I'm going to choose Kentucky. But you would write something unique on your own letter. And then finally, we close it with sincerely, comma, and the name of your settler. You can make it your own name. Now, take a moment again, pause your video, and wrap up your letter. Tell the person how you feel, ask them to write you back, and tell them to tell you what's new in your homeland. Remember, we close a letter with sincerely, comma, and the name of the person who is writing. And I'll check back on you after you pause in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now at this point, you're either completely done with your letter, or you are adding some finishing touches, or maybe need a little bit of clarification. I'm finished teaching you, but at this point in the video, if you want to pause and look at the letter, keep in mind the black writing are sentence starters that you can copy or adjust, and the green writing is prompts that tell me about the research that you have done yesterday. So, good luck on your letter. Whenever you're ready, upload a photo of your finished draft, or if you need extra time, pause this video and finish your draft.